Welcome back, and indeed thank you for joining me again. Now what I would like to do over the next few weeks is go through a series of 11 padlocks that I have in my collection, from the absolute worst, which is this one that we will be looking at today, all the way up to the very best that I have in my collection, and one that I would highly recommend. And once we reach number 11, I will then introduce you to the series of 2M security branded padlocks, which all have the 2M branding and my mobile number on. So if you ever get into trouble, you have the number there to call. There is 4 in the series of my padlocks, and they all have hardened shackles. But today we're going to start with this one, and quite honestly, it's an absolute waste of time. It retails about £18 in the shops, which to me is a rip-off, and it rates about 7 or 8 out of 10 in security measures, which is hilarious. So the first thing I wanted to do was weigh it, just to demonstrate. It weighs nearly a pound in weight, which would suggest good quality and heavy metal. Now, looking at the shackle first of all, flat sides, so very hard to cut with an angle grinder, and indeed bolt cutters. Unfortunately, with the shackle, the first thing we find is there is a lot of movement in the lock, suggesting poorly made and too much room for manoeuvre and force. The second thing we look at is the fact that the metal shell looks sealed all the way around. It looks nice, it looks like it's going to keep the weather out and take some destructive force. But of course then you look at the side here, and here you can see, if I can bring it a little closer, there's a big long seam where you can force a tool in and you can rip it out here, rip it out here. There's also a large gap all the way around this side where you can force something in quite easily and just rip the shell straight open. Release the shackle, tear it to pieces, job's a good one. It's off, you're gone. Total waste of time. I like the idea that they've thought about weatherproofing and they've put a little cover here, but unfortunately I try to stifle my laughter when you look at the size of the lock. This is my little finger, and the size of the lock is just disproportionate to the rest of it. It's a 4 or 5 pin, and it took me about 2.5 to 3 seconds to get in it. There is another video that you can see in my series that shows me picking this straight out of the wrapper, 2.5 to 3 seconds at most. I have seen other locksmiths single pin picking it, and it took about 1.5 minutes, but I think that's because they use too much tension. But you don't need to single pin pick things when you can rake it or just attack it with the right sort of pick and you're straight in. It's a real shame. It had potential, but it's failed. I would suggest these could go on wheel clamps, but then you're going to be in seconds. So I guess if you've been clamped illegally, that's great, because we'll get you in and we'll get you out. But apart from that, it seems like they've used heavy materials and expensive products to make a very poorly designed lock. So quite honestly, that thing is going in the bin. And there it goes. I do hope this was useful for you, and it's a shame that we start off with an absolutely appalling lock, but that's what we're here for. I'm here to recommend the locks that I think are good and advise you against the locks that are bad, because ultimately I'm working as a locksmith. You want my advice, I will tell you straight. I'm not going to recommend rubbish. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you would like to come back and join me in video number 2 of 11, we will be looking at this. And we will be discussing why this is good, why this is bad, and what we're thinking about of it. And little sneak preview, you can see the keyhole here. You can see it's quite a solid lock with layers of metal here, which gives many, many options when they're mass producing them of putting the plates in a different order to create different key combinations. And a long shackle, which you would think is quite useful in different scenarios. So we'll put that there, and we'll say thank you for watching. Please come back and join me for part 2. And if you've liked what you've seen, do feel free to subscribe and press the thumbs up button, and I know that this is the sort of thing that you'd like. So thank you for watching. See you in part 2.